Greetings and welcome to Believe TV. My name is Bruce Sampson. I am your host. Um, thank you for those of you who are tuning in and joining in. It has been a minute. I can't even tell you the last time I did. It was probably a few weeks ago. But anyway, I'm glad to be back. I just wanted to take this time in this episode to just kind of catch up with folks and just let everyone know what's going on, what has been going on, and some exciting things that are coming that I'd love to share with you. If you've never tuned into this program before, whether you're watching live or um, on replay, either way, thank you for being here. And just know that this is an interactive forum and that I enjoy getting folks who come on and say hello and tell us where they are, where they're watching, and and ask questions or provide feedback. I love that. I enjoy that. So even if you happen to do it while I'm not live and you are watching it later and want to throw some thoughts in, I appreciate that. And I usually try my best to get back to you and to respond to those. So feel free to do that. So if you're watching on Facebook, you'll be able to be interactive with me and in the comments. That's where you can leave those thoughts and concerns and questions and what have you. Um, so for let's just uh, I guess just go back a little ways. Some of the stuff I'm going to talk about, I'm going to assume that I've already shared, but I'll just touch on them lightly anyway. Um, so a while back, I was so there was a period of 2 weeks where I was in Southern California, then another 2 weeks when I was in Arkansas, and then yesterday I was in Mississippi. um, anyway, lot of traveling, lots of stuff going on, lots of exciting things. Um, there was a point when I was talking to someone about everything that I was doing, and I was saying that I was tired, and then I quickly corrected myself and said, I am blessed because um, it certainly beats the alternative. There was a period of time where I was pretty much on lockdown, wasn't going anywhere, didn't really have any major projects to do. Everything that I was working on were things that I could just do in the house and never go outside my house. And so um, I went from kind of that to all of a sudden uh, being much more in demand and much more just busy, doing lots of things and things that I care about, things that I'm passionate about. And that is a blessing. And so, yes, tired a little bit, um, but it's all good. It's all good stuff. It's not like I'm exhausted and I can't go on. It's like, no, it's like um, the hardest part of anything that I've been doing has been based on travel. The travel part sometimes is the hard part. The actual thing I'm going to do is usually beautiful and I love it and I enjoy it. And if there were a way to have the technology from Star Trek where you could just kind of like beam me to wherever I wanted to go, then everything would be perfect. Then that would be fantastic. Just Scotty, beam me here, beam me there. Then we'd be great. Then I wouldn't have to deal with the driving and the flying and all that sorts of stuff. But in the end, it's all worth it. And usually I will take those opportunities when I'm driving and traveling, waiting for a plane, you know, um, those sorts of things and moments to reflect and use that time to when otherwise I'd be super busy, just going back and forth to kind of just breathe for a second, catch up on emails and messages and see how people are doing in their lives and those sorts of things, as well as just think about uh, what's coming next and what uh, just the things that I want to do going forward. So um, I wanted to kind of just catch you up, first of all, on past stuff. So that's kind of it. But I will say I wanted to talk about each thing just for a moment. So let's start with California. So I went to California early October, um, or late September, one or the other. Anyway, I went there to work with the Young Americans. There was a show that that the Young Americans were asked to do, um, to kind of give two performances at uh, the American Academy of Pediatricians, I think it is. Um, and they were having a big convention in Southern California, and it was their first time back since pre-pandemic. And so it was, thousands of people were there, and it was amazing. And it was held at the Anaheim Convention Center. And uh, if you've ever been to the Anaheim Convention Center, it's kind of between two major hotels, and I think it's the Hilton and the Marriott. I think is what it is. And so they literally had people in both hotels and activities going on in both hotels, plus in the arena in the middle of all that. So there was a lot of walking and running around and stuff over that period of time. So the first week, first week and a half was mostly just rehearsal, just bringing folks together and putting together the performances. There were two. One was scheduled to be on a Saturday night, and it was kind of because this is kind of a 2-day event for them, I think. So we were there for the meet and greet, and so we did a show that evening, and it was just like a 15-minute, hey, let's have some fun, sing and dance, and just welcome everyone to this thing that was kind of an outside mixer. They set up a big, huge stage um, and a performance area, and it was so crowded and so crazy that we weren't even sure if people were going to be paying attention to us. Like we were kind of warned that up front that don't be upset if people aren't really paying attention because it's really a mixer and people are getting food and drinking and connecting with one another and they hadn't seen each other in a long time. So if they're not really paying attention, don't be upset. So we warned the Young American performers about that. That was not the case. They were all about it to the extent that in this performance that they did that night, it was kind of funny because um, the Young Americans, like I said, like this 15-minute thing. But after they did their opening number, then I came on stage to conduct the choral part and talk to the audience and then leave. And so when it was time for me to do that, I actually had to have their team and some security move the people aside to get me on and get me off the stage. Um, so it was kind of funny, but also kind of cool because it felt like a rock star for a second. Like, oh, got all the security like moving people and getting me through to get me onto the stage and everything. And then, like I said, waiting to get me off the stage as well. But it was a blast. Everyone was really into it. They loved our performance. They loved everything we did. And then the next morning was the big, huge event that was in the arena. And so we had spent most of the previous day rehearsing for that because that was actually what they wanted us for. And we were really just doing one number. And it was in conjunction with some doctors. And so we had some singing doctors who were on the stage with us. And we did a number from Dear Evan Hansen, You Will Be Found. And it was coordinated with video projection. And it was so cool. It was amazing. Um, it it was definitely one of those things that like when I was looking at it and the amount of people involved in producing and everything, I'm like, this could have been broadcast on TV. This is incredible. Um, and I'm actually looking forward to getting video from that because they were videotaping it professionally with a number of cameras as well. Anyway, that all went beautifully, and it was a reminder of days in the past when I had those opportunities to be part of big shows and productions like that. Um, and yeah, and everything went well, and everyone was happy, and it was emotional, and our performance brought people to tears and standing ovation, and it was just a wonderful thing. So glad to be a part of that. But again, a lot of work. I was exhausted, right? So then, luckily, I didn't book my flight for the next day to go to Arkansas. I had one day in between, so I had time to repack, clean my clothes, kind of rest up a little bit, and then fly to Arkansas. And where I was in Arkansas was Eureka Springs, and I went to go be a guest director for the Young Americans Dinner Theater that they had there. Their dinner theater that they normally have every year in the summer up in northern Michigan. They did their 3 or so months there, and then moved everybody and everything to Eureka Springs to this new venue called Center Stage. And uh, they started this last year, and this was their second year uh, doing this. And I went last year just for a couple of days. I was only there for maybe 3 days at most. And this time I was there for 2 weeks. So I was happy about that because part of my job when going there is to watch the show, assess what's going on in and around the show, and just see how the cast is doing, make sure everybody's okay, connect with the ownership of Center Stage, make sure they're cool, um, take whatever notes I can about how things are going, and especially with regard to the show, give notes to the cast and let them know areas where they can improve, or hey, watch out for this, or what have you. And so I had a blast, and I was glad that this time I had more time with them, because the last time it was such a short visit that it made I gave notes, but nothing from the standpoint of let's take the time to fix this or change it or whatever, because there was no time. And so this time was great because I actually had time to see the show a couple of times before I ever gave notes, because they were ready the first night. You have any notes for us? I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm not going to have notes until I see this twice, at least twice. And then I'll give you notes after that. And so that's what I did. And um, we had a good time. I loved working with them. They were so open, and they just really received everything that I had to offer well, and their work ethic was great, and just good people, and it was just nice to be in that kind of environment in both cases, in California and in uh, Eureka Springs, Arkansas. So anyway, in that instance, one of the things that I learned is, well, it wasn't so much learned as remembered my I remembered some of the gifts that I have, that God gave me, that I I will sometimes assume, like I've talked about this before. Like I had this issue where, not really an issue, but it's just a thing where I don't usually walk into a situation and assume that I'm the smartest one in the room, or that I have the answers. In fact, usually anything that comes to my mind, I usually assume that others have already thought of it too. So there's no need for me to say anything because I'm sure they've already thought about that. So I've been in meetings, I've been in work situations, I've been in shows and whatever, when there's something presented as an issue, and there's something that comes to my mind immediately that says, oh, well, you should try this or this or this. But I won't say it because I'll assume that, oh, I'm sure they've already thought of that. So let me think outside the box. And so I won't bring it up. And then later I'll bring it up. Like if they don't get anything, I go, well, I'm sure you guys already thought about this. And I go, no, actually, we didn't. And that happened a couple of times in both those scenarios where um, I had to remember, oh yeah, and then the whole thing of like, that's why I'm there. That's why they've asked me to go there. It's, for those reasons. And um, anyway, just to say, it was all wonderful, and I love opportunities to grow and for self um, personal growth. I love when I'm in a situation where I can learn more things about me, and ways that I can improve. And like, oh, caught myself doing something. I promised myself I wasn't going to do that. And then now I can, address it, deal with it, move on. Um, so anyway, both of those situations were fantastic. Came home. I was exhausted, rested for a couple of days. Then I think the very next thing I did was, yeah, it was like a day or two after I got back. The Washington Men's Club, which I belong to in my hometown of, they're based in my hometown of Bogalusa, um, got a message saying that we were scheduled to go give out candy at local elementary school for trunk or treat for Halloween. And so I went to go do that. That was a blast. Got to see people I hadn't seen in a while. It's always a pleasure to be around that group of men. Many of them were, when I was coming up, they were the people I looked up to. One of them, in fact, was my principal when I was in high school at one point. Assistant principal or principal, one or the other. Anyway, and known him my whole life and have the utmost respect for him. And was so anytime I can be in the company of those men, it's always my classes in session. It's an opportunity to learn, and uh, so that was a wonderful thing to come back to. Um, and oh, so then there was this other thing that happened. I, and this is what I don't think I talked about this last time. Anyway, on my flight back, I may have talked about this, so forgive me if I'm repeating. Um, so on my flight back, um, I get on the plane, my seat's reserved, whatever, and I always get an aisle seat. And I happen to be in a row that um, I think it I can't remember if it was a 2 seat or a 3 seat. Um, but anyway, there was no, it was a 2 seat. It was definitely a 2 seat because the person next to me against the window came in at the very last second because I remember thinking, oh, I may luck out and have no one sit next to me because like the whole plane boarded and no one sat there. So I was about to get really comfortable and not worry about having to move to let someone into the other seat, thinking, oh, I'm going to have lots of room here in space, So, but then at the last second, this lady comes on. She goes, oh, I almost missed my flight. And so she comes and she sits next to me. And if you know me, usually I'm not usually one to initiate conversations on planes when I'm traveling. I just usually don't. It has to be usually something really striking to me, or I just have to be in one of those moods. Most of the time when I fly, I'll usually sleep. So I'll usually either, depending on the length of the flight, if it's a really long flight and they are offering movies and stuff, then sometimes I'll watch those. And on this flight, they were offering, TV and movie or whatever you could watch, but I wasn't even about it. I'm like, I'm going to sleep, you know. And so I I did actually sleep. We took off, and then as they were serving, snacks and drinks or whatever, that's what woke me up. And so I thought, oh yeah, I'll have a, Sprite or something or whatever I had. And so um, from the moment I woke up, the lady next to me initiated a conversation and started, asking me, where I was from and stuff, and what I'd been doing in Arkansas, and so we had that conversation, and I kind of told her without being specific. I just went, hey, I work with a performing arts troupe, and I was here guest directing with them, and da, da, da. And she goes, oh, that's fascinating. She asked me a few questions or whatever, and then Then I said, well, let me return the favor. So, what are you doing in Arkansas? And, where are you headed? And so she was saying, that she produces events, like, big wedding events and um, just big events. And so she had a whole team on the flight with her. And she said that this was their last event of the year. And she said, so this was a great way to cap off the year. And I was like, cap off the year in October? And so I was like, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. There are businesses like that are seasonal. And she also explained that she and her husband made a deal when she started this new business that when it was new, that she'd always take off the winter months, November and December, so that could be family time. And they had a little boy, and they were going to go to Disney, and they were going to do all these things. I'm like, that's fantastic. That's great that you made that a priority and that you've established and set up your business that way so that you're able to do that. And so we got into that discussion, and she talked, and she was telling me about how passionate she was about what she did, but she said at the end of the day the business isn't about her, it's about the people that she's doing it for. So when it's someone's wedding, for instance, it's about giving them their dream. This is the day they're going to remember forever. So it's like I want to do everything in my power to make that happen. It's I always remind myself and my staff that it's not about me. It's not about us. It's about them. This is their day forever. We will move on to the next job, but they will always have this day. So we've got to do everything we can to make it everything they ever dreamed of. So I'm like, cool, awesome, love that. Um, so I so anyway, so then she started to then she mentioned that she was from Michigan. And I go, oh. And so anytime anyone tells me Michigan, I've spent so many summers and so much time in northern Michigan, especially, that I always want to find out where people are from and if they happen to be anywhere that I've been. And so I asked her, where are you from? And she goes, Traverse City. And I go, oh my gosh. And she goes, you've been there? And I go, well, yeah. I mean, I always fly into Traverse City when I'm going to Harbor Springs or Petoskey. And she goes, Harbor Springs? And she goes, I used to work in Harbor Springs. I'm like, oh, how funny. I go, well, then have you heard of Boyne Highlands or the Highlands? And she goes, that's where I used to work. And I'm like, get out of here, because that's where the Young Americans host their annual dinner theater every summer. And so um, she said, yeah, I was a golf pro there. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And she, so she knew who the Young Americans were. She remembered the dinner theater. And she's like, oh my gosh, I love them. And, so we went through this whole talk about that. And then I also talked to her about Believe and how for me it's the same thing. It's like that she was talking about with her business of the passion of doing this for other people. That's what this is really about ultimately. And how and we both got across that we were people of faith. We were both Christians, and we started talking about our faith and how that um, applies to our business and the things that we do in life. And so that was a really cool conversation too. And it was one of those situations where, like, one, I'm glad I woke up, and I'm glad to have had that conversation because in the end, it was another thing that fed me. It was that affirmation that, yes, you're doing the right thing. Yes, I get you. Yes, I can relate to that. Yes, there are people doing good in the world. Yes, what I mean? Just yes, yes, yes throughout. And so, anyway, um, so that was that situation. Okay, I'm trying to keep everything in order. Um, so that was that situation. In fact, I was going to share with you. In fact, let me go ahead and do this now. So this is a picture from the Trunk or Treat. This is at Central Elementary School in Bogalusa. And this is some of the gentlemen from the men's club. Uh, and that's us giving out, candy to the kids and stuff. Obviously, I'm taking the picture, so I'm not in the picture. But there's that. And then let's see how this is going to work. Oh, I knew that was going to happen. Okay, hide. There we go. Then this is the other thing I was going to talk about. So all this stuff was just coming back to back to back to back. And so then the next thing was early voting. So this is a picture of me. You can see the little sticker on there that I got. I just finished voting. And anyone who knows me, I posted this on my Facebook. Anybody that knows me knows how passionate I am about voting. And so I wanted to take a second to talk about that on here, just to say, encourage folks on Tuesday to go vote. Not going to tell you what to vote for, who to vote for, but vote. But I will say this, please make sure you're informed. And when I say that, a lot of people will say, well, of course I'm informed. I know, I've done my research. Have you though? Have you really? Or have you just listened to the talking heads and the friends and the other folks who you know already agree with your point of view? You know what I mean? Or that are going to say the stuff that you want to hear. Because sometimes being informed means, I mean, well, not sometimes, always, it should be listening to both sides, actually hearing what people have to say, not listening to your side talk about what the other side is, actually listening to the other people and seeing what they have to say, listening to them, and then making your decision based on that type of information. Reading from different sources that you might not, you may normally not listen to or read or whatever. Check them out because it's too important. It's too important. In many cases, it's life or death. And in this case, in my opinion, it's whether or not we are going to maintain liberty and democracy. Because there are a lot of folks saying a lot of things and making a lot of promises of things that they're going to do, if they get into power, that are, quite frankly, frightening when you look at the big picture of our democracy. Now, for those of you who agree with those points of view, it may be one of those things where you go, oh, I agree with that, so I'm fine with it. Be careful. Be careful because I think I've talked about this before, but the idea that we sometimes are creatures of, I don't even know how to describe it other than to use this analogy of sports teams, professional sports teams. And most of us can probably say that this has happened if you've lived long enough. Say you have your favorite team, right? And you have a rival team. And there's usually one guy on that team or on one of your rival teams that you just don't like that guy. Just can't stand that guy. Maybe you've said in the past, oh, he's a dirty player. Oh, I don't like that person because of their attitude. Oh, I don't like that guy because he's always flopping, pretending like he got hurt. I don't like, whatever the reason is, right? But that player is also very successful at helping their team, right? So you don't like that guy because he's on the other team, and and I hate all this stuff about him. Then all of a sudden, that guy is up for trade, and your team gets him. I have yet to see a situation. I mean, in all honesty, I can't think of one. I can't think of one situation, at least that in terms of teams that I've monitored and the sports that I monitor, that someone, um, how do I say it? That once they got that person, especially when they were good and good for their team, that they were still maintaining the attitude that they didn't like the guy. Now you're making excuses for the guy. Now it's like, oh no, as long as he's doing it for your team, it's all good, right? But when he was doing it on the other team against your team, now I have an issue, right? So that so when we look at politics and we look at people who are running for office, and people who are we're electing to serve in various roles, right, in government, we sometimes do the same thing. So those of us who are Republicans or Democrats, well, it's the R team or it's the D team, and um, and even if normally you wouldn't have liked that guy, and in some cases we've had this too, where we've had them switch teams, right? You got somebody be on one team, you know, well, they were always a Republican, and then suddenly they switched to Democrat, or vice versa, and you wouldn't have voted for them when they're part of that other party, but now you'll vote for them. It's like that's when you got to question. Well, wait a minute, what are you voting for? Are you just voting for the label? Like, is that what it's about? Because if that's what it's about, that's kind of scary. So, I want to throw in this other thing. So, as those of you who are eligible to vote, if you haven't early voted, please make sure you make time and you have a plan to go vote. I don't care what the weather is like, go vote. It is so important. And one of the reasons I can tell you is because if you have questions and you think, oh, it doesn't matter, my vote doesn't count. Yes, it does. And yes, it does. It matters and your vote counts. And it's important that you let your voice be heard because I always use this as a statement about the importance of voting. If voting weren't so important, people wouldn't spend so much money on it. And you wouldn't have so many people trying to stop you from doing it. Especially as an African American, there's a history in this country where I have ancestors who did never voted, never had an opportunity to vote. It was against the law for them to vote, right? And then you had all these people who marched and fought and died so we'd have the right to vote. If it wasn't important, would all of that have happened? No. It is extremely important. And so when we get upset about policing or cleanliness in our neighborhoods or how our schools are run or anything like that, how dare you be upset about anything that happens and not vote? Because that is determining who is going to be put in those positions, who's going to make those rules, who's going to enforce the laws, right? Who's going to educate our kids? What type of education are they going to get? Are they going to be safe? All those things have to do with that. And it's just a cop out when you say, "Oh, my vote doesn't count, so I'm just not going to go." And it kills me the people who are smug about it. Like, if they're not going to trick me, you've already been played. You don't even realize it, but you got played. Because if they got you to be, disinterested and not participate, then they've won. We used to have this big thing against communists and now and to some degree socialists and all of this stuff, whatever. And we would consider other countries that had those types of governments to be our enemies, right? And do you know that that's nothing would make them happier? Whenever they see us either not participating in the process, the democratic process, or at each other's throats, no longer treating each other as fellow Americans who disagree, they're laughing their butts off, right? They're like, yes, yes, that's what we wanted. And we're sitting here with this higher than, mighty attitude, and thinking we're standing for something, not realizing at the same time we're tearing down the very fabric of everything that we say we stand for and that we believe in. Because so and so disagrees with me, and so plays for a different team. It's like, no, you're missing the big picture. I've talked about this before about the whole idea of vision. That there's so many people that I've encountered in business and in entertainment and what have you that have no vision. Like they can't see beyond what's in front of them. You hand them a set of rules and all they can see are those rules. Not understanding that there's nuance in the application of those rules. That if you can't see the big picture and you strictly just go, well, it says I can only do this, says I'm supposed to do this and this and this. Well, no, well, that's dumb. It's like, here's an example. At a restaurant, okay, so you go to a restaurant, you order something off the menu, they bring it to you. It's not quite prepared the way you like it. Something's wrong with it. Whatever it is, from mild to majorly wrong. If you then go, excuse me, waiter, and they come back and you say, well, I'm not paying for this. I want something, this isn't the way, what I expected, or, whatever. How upset would you be if they said, oh, sorry, you ordered it. That's how we make it. There you go. You'd be upset. Well, almost all of us have heard the whole, the phrase that the customer's always right. That's basically a tenet that means that if you're in business, you're reliant on you rely on your customers. And so arguing with them or saying, no, you're not going to get your money back, or hey, let me see if I can make this right for you. If you don't do those things, if you aren't going to try to give good customer service and make them want to come back to you again, you're hurting yourself, because ultimately that word's going to get around, because when someone's upset, they're more likely to go around telling people their bad experience than their good experience, right? If they go there and they get exactly what they wanted, they go about their business, right? But if they go there, and it's usually an extreme, so if they go there and it was way beyond what they expected and the value was fantastic for what they paid, like, oh my gosh, then they'll go tell people about it. But if it was like, oh, that's what I expected, they go about their business. But let there be something wrong with the service or with the food or with the whatever, right? They're going to go tell people about it, just so you know, because they want to tell people not to go there. There has to be a penalty for that, right? So anyway, it's just getting back to that whole thing. It is we have to become educated to the best of our ability, and and be open to hearing other points of view. Because if you lock yourself in a silo and only listen to the folks you disagree with, and look, and we live in an age now, Facebook, Instagram, what have you, and all the different websites and stuff that are online. You don't have to look very long before you find somebody who thinks the way you think. And then if you go there and you refuse to hear anything else, well, you're doing yourself and everyone else a disservice. So you are being hoodwinked, and you are allowing the other folks to um, get away with something, and to keep putting chinks in the armor of our democracy. And when we don't try to figure out a way, if we don't try to figure out a way to unite and stop thinking of our fellow Americans as the other, we're doomed. We are doomed. And we think we're being so smart. But one of the things I was blessed with, or maybe it's cursed, is vision. And God has given me that gift of being able to look at situations and see a bigger picture and go, wow. And sometimes see that others don't get what's happening, what's going on. Like, man. And I'm looking at the world today, America today especially, but it's around the world. And it is amazing how people are just dug in, and dug in and wrong. Because I just in the last 2 days, I've watched these different news reports on different channels, with different points of view, and I've been listening to PBS and some different reports, right? And people being interviewed about their political positions or thoughts about whatever, and when they're pressed on it, of like, well, tell me more about that, or that doesn't really make sense that this would be this way, or whatever. There's never been any proof of that. We've never seen that anywhere. You'll watch the person kind of do, like, you can see that they're thinking it through, but they're like, nope, I'm dug in. I've already made this decision, so that's what it's going to be. Even though for a second you made me realize that I haven't thought this thing all the way through. But nope, nope, nope. Can't sway me. Like, what? We used to be in search of the truth. We used to care about being informed and making sure we understood what was happening. We used to. Now it just seems to be about being on the winning side, and uh, making sure that the winning side is something you agree with. And in some cases, it's just a matter of, is the winning side, is it the side that folks look the most like me, or in the field that I'm in, or the what have you, right? Share some similarity to me and my life and my beliefs and whatever. And sometimes that's not the case, and sometimes you need that disparate voice, that other outside voice to come in and bring some reason and some rationality to the situation to make you go, oh, yeah. And I'm going to say this, but then I'm going to immediately come back and say something else about it. Is that what I'm describing is happening on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans. And let me take this opportunity to remind you, for those, or inform you for those that don't know, I am now and have always been a registered independent. In my history, I have voted for Republicans, I have voted for Democrats, I have voted for Green Party, I have voted for, you know, based on who the person was and who they profess to be and what they profess to do, right? And me doing my own research, just did my best and then made a choice. In some cases, I've regretted the choices I made, but for the most part, I've usually been pretty satisfied with my selection, even if they weren't able to fully accomplish everything that I'd hoped that they would, right? Um, but anyway, we we need to seek out the truth. Here's another thing that I've been talking about more often with people who listen, is like, when we talk about crime and policing and laws and whatever, it is amazing to me sometimes that we don't, what's the word? That we don't look at I guess nuance is a way to say it. Um, but like, gosh, I'm trying to think of a good way to say this. Um, like, so with regard to crime, let's say, we when I grew up, I remember adults. I remember being in school and sometimes policemen would come in and talk to our class, about the law and police and what they do and whatever, and lawyers and whoever, right? And they would always talk about going to jail as the idea was to get people to reform, right? Do your time, serve your sentence, whatever it is, but the idea was to get them to reform, to get to rehabilitate. That's the word I'm looking for. Rehabilitation. I can't remember the last time I heard anybody talk about rehabilitation when it comes to that. We've gotten to a place now where everything is about if there's a problem, make it go away. I don't like those people. They need to go. They committed a crime. Don't want to ever see them again. Take them off the streets. Don't want to ever see them again. That's our point of view. And that's when we think we're safe. When in fact, if you don't deal, first of all, go towards rehabilitation because in most cases, most crimes, minor ones at least, those people are going to be back on the street at some point. And if you haven't rehabilitated them or done something to give them useful skills or opportunities once they leave, if you still treat them the way we treat them while they're in jail, when they come out, they're probably going to do something that justifies them going back in. And it's amazing to me that we don't seem to get that because that's not how we treat situations and that's not how we tend to vote. And that's not usually what comes out in the discourse when we talk about crime and whatever, right? It's always get those people away, get them out, get them removed. Okay. Yes, but then what? And we always talk about our tax dollars of, oh, we're paying for them and, whatever, because that's one of the discussions that comes up when we talk about um, uh, like someone who's convicted of murder. You go, oh, well, if they got the death sentence, one of the arguments for it is that that's cheaper. Then why should we continue to pay and feed and house these people who have done this? And it's always about our tax dollars, right? And so, or you'll hear talks about they have TV in prison. Oh, well, well, I want my tax dollars going to them watching TV. Like, okay, okay, I get that kinda, but at the end of the day, you need to see the vision of do you want them to come out as animals or do you want them to come out as human beings who want to forge a better life for themselves and their community? Seems like that second one is the better one to opt for. That's the one that seems to make the most sense for all of us. Why aren't we doing that? Why isn't that what we opt for? No, now we've been convinced that there are so many others that the others need to be off the streets. The others need to go away. So we love that concept of ship them off somewhere. And we can put them on a boat and go ship them on some island and put them in a cage or whatever. Let's do that because now we remove the problem. Well, no, you haven't really removed the problem. You remove the resulting offender most recent offenders, but you haven't really removed the problem because you haven't addressed the problem that created that. We're always now of the assumption that the person is just evil. They just decided to make a bad choice. Mm, maybe, or maybe they were never presented with choices. Maybe they were in a situation, whether it's their family or school life or neighborhood or whatever, that made them think that I have no choice. There was no one there to stand with me and say, hey, I'm going to help you, young man. I'm going to help you, young lady. I'm going to take time out of my scheduling and care about you. One of the things that I'm just going to mention his name. I don't think he'll mind. Coach McGee said not too long ago at one of our men's club meetings. There was something about someone was talking about what some of the work I do with Believe and working with young people, and someone gave me some type of compliment of some sort, and Coach McGee was funny because he said, look, I don't know if you knew his parents, but if you knew his parents, if he was doing anything else, they come and get him like that, and first of all, that was a beautiful statement in my mind about my parents, and basically saying that they raised me right, you know. And so that's ultimately what he was saying, is that they were good people who raised me right. And if I was doing anything else, I'd be going against their teaching. And he was right, in large part he's right. Um, and especially, and I've talked about this before, especially about my dad specifically, that now I kind of look back and there are things now that's similarities between myself and my father that I didn't see before that I see now. Um, and very clearly things that were passed down to me from my parents and my family about being involved in my community, about trying to make a difference. And oftentimes, quite truthfully, we just have people in the community who don't want to get involved. They love the idea that someone else is. You know, they'll pat you on the back, but they won't show up to be part of it. But they'll most certainly complain when things go sour, when that kid did whatever, when at the end of the day, virtually every situation of crime comes from a failure from the community in some source, in some way. You know, what do you mean? What do you mean? I was talking with a friend earlier today about how we used to live in a world, at least community, where we all looked out for each other's children. And that I knew full well that I couldn't be somewhere away from my parents in the public and quote unquote acting a fool, you know, or doing something that was uncharacteristic of how they raised me and what their expectations were for me. Um, because some adult would say, hey, that's not okay. And I knew that it would be yes, sir, yes, ma'am, to whoever that was, to whoever that adult was, right? Um, and I also knew that before I could make it home in the days pre cell phone, before I could make it home, they'd already gotten a phone call. And do you know what Bruce was doing today? You know, like I already knew. So I'm like, oh, please. So I got chastised there in public, and now I'm going to go home and get it too. And it wasn't a situation where, like in some cases now, if you say something to a child or you try to correct them or help them, the parents are usually the first ones to jump on your case, assuming my child can't be wrong. My mom always told me, and I tell people this all the time, that she would always tell me, you know right from wrong. I raised you, you were smart. You, you know, you're not a dumb person. You understand right from wrong. You understand laws. You understand our expectations for you, and what have you, right? And so she said, if you were ever arrested, she said, call me. And the first question that she's going to ask me is, did you do it? So whatever I'm accused of, question is, did you do it? If my answer is what she expected to be is no, I did not, then she said, I will move heaven and earth to get you out and get you taken care of. And I knew she would. If you knew my mom, you know that that's the case. But she said, if you tell me you did do it, then her response would be, okay, I'll see you on visiting day. Because you're still my child. I still love you. But you knew the consequences and you did it anyway. So now you're going to have to pay the price for that. And I'll come visit you and I'll come pray for you and I'll bring you food, and I'll, whatever, right? But you're going to do your time because you know better. And we all need to get to a point where we know better and not be so comfortable in being comfortable. So anyway, I didn't really mean to talk that long about voting and everything, but please, really, just a couple of minutes out of your day, out of your time, and it means everything. And if you don't, you're just making excuses, because the truth is, just like the census, it matters. It matters. All those people who didn't have time to do the census or thought there was a conspiracy, so they didn't fill out the census, will then look around and go, how come these roads aren't fixed? And how comes that we don't have that anymore? And how come we don't? Because the census was underreported for our community. So therefore the resources were taken away and given somewhere else. That's why. Because you were so convinced in this conspiracy that you didn't see the big picture and the importance of doing and understanding what the census was. And that's the last little piece that I'm going to say. Is that the other piece of where we are right now as a country and as a community has to do with the things that we have taken out of the school, including civics, of people understanding how their government works, understanding how civilization works, understanding history, and not being afraid of history. Let's talk about it, because that's how you make sure you don't repeat mistakes. You've got to know about it first and understand what happened as a result of it. And then you move forward from there. So anyway, I don't know why I had two pictures of me up the whole time. My apologies to everyone for having to look at two of my face. But yeah, we've got to get back to educating. And anytime you hear anybody talk about burning books and let's not teach people stuff because it may make them feel weird or whatever, like, no, 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 no. That's the wrong answer. Wrong, wrong, wrong answer. We need to know. And we've all heard it time and time again. Those who don't know the past are doomed to repeat it. If you don't know, if you don't understand it, it's going to cycle back around. And we were going to try that again because, and people are going to look and say, didn't they look in the history books? Didn't they realize that, oh no, that's right. That's when they took all those books out of school. That's when they started teaching it, right? And the very same people that talk about all those people are snowflakes on that side or whatever are the same ones that are so afraid of their kids hearing that we once had slavery or that, whatever. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Right? Now, I get it that sometimes people making the arguments for things aren't really necessarily the best advocates and don't fully explain the big picture. But that's where it comes back to us doing our own research and history and looking up the history of things. Okay, So that's going to do it. But just real quick, just since I already had these, I'm just going to throw these up. So this is some of the pictures from some of the stuff that's happened in the past. This is um, the cast and band in Eureka Springs, and that was after their not their last show, but the last show while I was there. Um, so we and I, I always have people do the live long and prosper thing um, whenever I can. Um, I did want to share this one too. This is a picture of Katie, uh, not of Katie, but a young lady who's attended my Believe camps, and she, for the Washington Parish Fair, she wrote a report about Believe, and she got a blue ribbon, and her mom shared that with me and posted it online. And so, just want to say, love you, Katie. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for expressing what Believe means to you. I truly, truly appreciate that. And then here's another one. I'm going to show you real quick. And this is just when my daughter and I went to, she was here visiting, and we went to go see The Little Mermaid in Slidell. And this is another one of our young lady who played The Little Mermaid is also a regular Believe participant as well. So that was really cool. Let's see, do I have any other? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And hold on. So, oh, that's wrong one. It's not the one I meant to do. Okay, I guess I lost it. Anyway, um, there's another young lady I was going to show you, but I'm actually going to try to get her on as a guest. She's also one of my regular Believe participants, and she's doing some really cool, amazing things. And I always want to applaud and recognize young people when they're doing the right thing and when they're just doing extraordinary things. And I would like to bring her on. And then this is the really, really last thing. So I'm just putting this up just to show Believe, because one of the things, and this will probably be the next episode that I do, will probably be somewhere about arts education, but we are about to do a pilot program for kind of an after school performing arts workshop class program kind of thing. I used to produce one, a couple of them actually, in Southern California. And I've been approached by some parents who asked if we could teach their kids. And so, getting together with a couple of members of the Believe team, and we're going to put something together. So, for those of you in Bogalusa, Washington Parish, who are interested, and if you're in junior high or high school, or you have kids in junior high and high school who are interested in the arts, um, want them to come be a part of this. It's going to be a really cool thing that we're putting together, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to announce next week or sometime this week that you can actually sign up for it at BelieveCamp.com. Um, and I'll obviously post it lots of places too online once we have that. It's going to be limited access though, so it's not just going to be like, oh, we'll take hundreds of people. No, it's going to be more like we'll take up to 25 people or something like that. So it will be limited, but it's going to be a new pilot program, performing arts after school club set slash classes program. Okay, so just want to let you know. So keep your eyes peeled and ears peeled and all that, and go vote. Thank you all again so much, and we will see you guys next time. Peace.